I started doing impressions, and I'm realizing way later I was doing comedy and impressions to literally not get hit and not get hurt and not be abandoned and not be avoided. And a lot of people are healing it now. The deepest trauma they've ever had that almost was dormant and created a character that had these attachment issues. You might create a character that gets straight A's, and you might think that's you, but it's not. It's what you created. And so that, I think, is moving me more towards secure attachment.
It sounds like what you've done is discover really, truly secure attachment in yourself.
I'm working on it.
It sounds like you have. You know all those hard things in your heart and in your mind that you try not to think about. When you're alone in the middle of the night and you try not to remember that painful relationship, that conversation you haven't had, that memory from childhood, or that person you have not let go. How much easier would your life be if you could laugh at that moment? Or at the bare minimum, if you could really ask yourself, what is it in this moment that I am supposed to learn? We're here today to have a wonderful conversation with a new friend, and we're inviting you into this conversation because I needed to hear it, and I know that you do too. Welcome, Kyle Cease, to the show.
My growth, believe it or not, more and more is not talking through things because I want to talk through things right away. So I've had a pattern very much of like, there's an issue, let's get right to it. Like, let's say it. Let's say what you're feeling, right? And so I have in me, I think, a part of me that noticed that when I do that, I'm actually wanting to process also my feelings through this person. And I feel like my pattern has been to extrovert everything through every other person and be in collaboration with them and almost hear them agree with it or nod or see the point that I'm making or something like that, like I'm doing now and you're nodding.
Yeah,
like,
correct. Yeah, I'm thinking that too.
I now feel this way because you're nodding, right? And so I find more my growth is to not talk through things. And I don't mean like an avoidant. I actually mean like a lot of things resolve themselves when I'm not trying to fix everything at that level. And I find that some people have the opposite where they've been introverting their whole life. And that's a repression in some ways for some people. And so to extrovert would actually be growth. To me, extrovert means my feelings go through every other person's ego before I hear it, right? So it's very anxious attachment to me to be like, I'll look at someone and if I'm in a restaurant and go pee, I make sure everyone at the table knows I'm going pee. Like
you just don't say, I'm going to the bathroom, I'll be right back.
Well, I don't mean that. I just mean like,
Okay.
I'm not leaving you, I think is the undertone. But yes, also it will be pee. So it'll be about 3 minutes.
I can see you standing up at the table and saying, this is not abandonment.
Right.
I am using the bathroom.
My God. But totally. And there is a wounded moment that I had in my childhood. I think that's a core thing because usually when I talk about it, although it's lost its charge lately, but often when I talk about it, I get emotional. But there was a moment in my childhood where I was in the school nurses. I was sick at school. I was probably 6 or 7. And my school was close enough, the elementary school was close enough that I could walk there. But I got sick at school and I went to the nurse's office. They called my mom to come pick me up. I went pee at one point. Mom comes into the nurse's office and they go, oh, he's not here. He must have walked home. Mom goes, oh, gets in the car and drives away. I come out and they go, oh, we just told your mom that I thought you left. So your mom's probably still in the parking lot. So I go out and I run after my mom and I can see the back of her car and I'm waving at it, and she turns right and I'm running after it. I'm just doing this. And it's just mom leaving me when I'm sick and running after the thing. This hit a wound that I think maybe, I don't know if it's specifically only that wound, but like that makes me want to make sure everyone knows I'll be right back. I'll be, just so you know, I'm not leaving you. And then there's all these feelings of like, that does bring up a pattern of like, if I say something and it's too much for an avoidant to hear and they turn and want to walk away, it's like, I'm like, that can't happen. That's the worst feeling to me because I'm suddenly looking at the back of my mom's car and feeling abandoned for the truth, right?
I hear that.
But I'm aware of that, and so it gets more and more healed as I meditate a couple hours a day and free myself and see through those lies. That's the beautiful thing about consciousness, right? Is that you can find these core wounds and see them, and then they're there for a while still,
Yes.
but they lose their charge once you see it. It can't stay that monster forever because you'll just be realizing I'm just choosing to stay avoidant when I actually know I don't need to, or I'm choosing to be anxious attachment.
I know that a lot of the people watching this show right now have had attachment issues for their entire life. That's why I want to invite every single one of you to check out my attachment repair program. It just might be the jump that you need to go from insecurely attached and lonely and frustrated to fully secure, connected, and bonded in a great relationship like nothing you've ever felt before. Check out my website, adamlanesmith.com, for the attachment repair program.
So when did you find out about all this attachment science, and how did you feel when you actually did?
I think that I mean, I've been doing some type of inner work almost every ounce of, I mean, whether it was starting as a stand-up comic at 12 years old, touring at 17, 18 as a headliner, and then doing inner work to heal stuff as I got my first glimpse of stage fright when I was like 27, which was really
17
weird.
to 27, 10 years. First
Yeah.
glimpse of stage fright, 27.
Yeah.
Okay, what happened there?
Well, I became a comic before I became a person
Mm.
and was really like almost oblivious to fears because kind of when you're a kid, you're just like, yeah, I'll go do this thing and I want to do this thing. And I became a comic and got lots of love for it and all kinds of stuff. And one day when I was 27, I was at this point able to do my stand-up in my sleep. I could go on stage anywhere and just kill and get almost bored in my mind because on the external I'm killing and inside my mind is just almost bored because I'm not necessarily creating new material. I'm just doing the hits.
Mm.
And one day I was on stage and my mind, out of nowhere, I was in Mesquite, Nevada, and my mind said, I wonder if you think about it enough, if you could make yourself faint. And right when I thought that, I got dizzy. I felt like everything went white. And then I thought this, basically, you can't not think about something. You could make yourself faint. You can't stop thinking about something, right? So it'll keep going. And then that'll ruin your career. And at that point, the only way I know that I'm loved is my career. So if my career falls apart, I don't exist, right? So it's not necessarily those last parts were a conscious revelation. It was just like, I have to fix this. So I went through a major dark kind of edge of suicidal year. And then the first opening of my conscious shift was getting a Comedy Central appearance with 3 months notice and me end up getting a Tony Robbins book.
Mm.
And it was actually, this is what happened. I was on a beach. I was really considering suicide because all I could picture is I'm going to faint when I'm on this Comedy Central thing and it will be my one shot and I will ruin my life. So I was tempted to go get a gun and shoot myself. I've had 3 different times that I almost killed myself. And I realized later that the reason we get suicidal when things get dark is because a thing that you were is ready to die, but it's not what you are. So that was going to be the death of I'm identified as my career. Do you get what I'm saying? And so the Kyle who is only loved because he's a comic is about to die. And so very often I think patterns are trying to die. And if we don't get that we're the now and we think we are the pattern, then we become massively suicidal because we think that's me. But what you used to be is trying to die. An attachment, a story. You are that relationship. You are that income. Those are trying to die to make room for something bigger. So I ended up not going to a gun shop. I went to a hospital and went to get anxiety medicine. And the best thing was that they took too long to call me to come back from the waiting room. And I was in there and I was around 40, 45 minutes and I heard a voice go, get up, get out of here. And of course, the people pleaser's like, you put your name on the list at Kaiser Permanente and you need to wait and everything.
How could you leave? What if they get worried?
Right. I know they'll be mad at me.
Yeah,
Right?
they would be.
And that was weirdly a time that I didn't tell anyone I'm leaving. Like I didn't be like, I'll be right back. I just walked out. But this voice, this first glimpse of this voice that was like a guidance system goes, get up, get out of here. And it was like this combination of horrifying and empowering. Like, you're not going to just numb this. You're not going to get pills. We're going to figure this out. So it said, go to a bookstore. And I was in this new thing, and I went to a Borders back when there was Borders, and I picked up a Tony Robbins book. And that was the beginning of my whole thing, the beginning of this insane new life. The first moment, Tony Robbins in the book says, yeah, you can't not think about something, but you also can't think of two things at the same time. Now, this is basic stuff now. I'm in a different world than this, but it was amazing to just go, okay, focus on what I do want. And for months, I started picturing I have the #1 special, I have all these different things, and I'm one of the top comedians, and started filling my mind up with optimism so much that the darkness wasn't showing anymore. And all of a sudden I had a #1 Comedy Central special and all kinds of different things. That's different than where I am now, but that was the beginning of my conscious shift. Through that journey, of course, that brought me to a place of learning how to release control and going to a higher vibration and allowing and being in the now. And in that journey, I started getting into attachment styles and learning about Attached, that book, and things like that too. So I know about those things.
So what are your relationships like during that period of time that you were just living in your comedian state?
Wow. Well, my relationships were very challenging. And I think a reason was because I lived on the road.
It's not easy.
It was not easy. I did over 1,000 colleges. I headlined every comedy club pretty much in the country. I've been to all 50 states multiple times and had a major Comedy Central career. And that in itself was weird because it really tricks you. I mean, you go perform in a room full of whatever, 400, 500 drunk people that love you. And then you go home and your partner does not care about any of that and is just mad at you.
Why are they mad at you?
Well, just like, you've been gone this whole time and I've been at home, or do the dishes, I don't care. You know what I mean?
Oh.
Like, there's a great song called Take the Long Way Home by Supertramp. You know that song? And that whole song is about, you think you're so great and then you go home and your wife doesn't care. And, that's kind of the contrasting feeling where your life is this Hollywood, you're a star and everyone loves you, but it's a very shallow love. They love you because you're on stage or whatever. And then you're like, well, that's the unconditional love that I want. And then you go home and she's mad or upset or just not the same. She's not a diehard fan. She's not obsessively.
It's impossible to
Right.
be a diehard fan, right?
Well,
Because the
that's-
whole point is that
Right.
once you go up on stage, you look good, you're prepared, you're in the zone. It can't be like that forever.
Well, of course. I'm saying it like I'm in the wrong on that. You know what I mean? Like that's the.
But the expectation really is there, right?
When you're more unconscious and you don't know any of this, you're just like, I want to be loved like that. And that's why I think a lot of entertainers and people that get really successful, they become depressed or suicidal or drug addicts because you want this thing that I like to call jackpot high. A lot of people want their happiness to be circumstantial. Now, if you hit jackpot in Vegas, you feel really good, but that also comes with, now I want to feel that again. So I'm going to live in Vegas now, and I'm going to go through all the lows that match the high. And a higher goal to me, instead of just hitting jackpot over and over, is getting out of Vegas and finding a here high that's whole and transcends the darkness more than avoids it by chasing that high.
I agree. Now, a lot of this is surprising to me because I have heard that the only people who become comedians are those who are too mentally healthy to do any other job. Is that true?
No, no.
Usually it's the opposite,
Yeah,
right?
no, I think that, anyone going on stage and talking about all their problems and needing a bunch of strangers to acknowledge them are full of pain.
Right.
And being a stand-up comic was a great outlet. And I felt like my audience was like a room full of therapists in a way, but
How did you
it's
learn
an
to
addiction.
be? How did you learn to be funny like that? Was that a defense mechanism for you? Was it an intention
Yes,
thing?
it was a defense mechanism. One thing that helped me was my dad's uncle was the prop man for Gallagher, the 80s comedian. My dad's mom was a famous puppeteer. She was on the Carol Burnett show. There was a lot of, I have an uncle that's a Grammy-nominated jazz musician. There's a lot of entertainers in my family. My dad was more of an entrepreneur, and my mom worked with him. And I would say that comedy protected me a lot. In fact, I realized that, I didn't feel a connection to my dad. He lived in his head, and there were a couple times that he spanked me, and it was not a spanking. It was like taking his life out on me. And I think that it really traumatized me and scared me. And that started me entertaining him because his uncle and his mom were in the entertainment industry. I know that when stand-up comedy was on or we were watching a sitcom, my dad was different. And he was suddenly laughing and nice and looking at me. And so I started doing impressions. And I'm realizing way later, I was doing comedy and impressions to literally not get hit and not get hurt and not be abandoned and not be avoided.
It's interesting how children actually have that response. I mean, I have a daughter, she's 7 now, and I think when she was about
I have
6.
a daughter that's 7 too.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Actually, you just missed mine.
Oh, really?
She was just passing by.
Maybe
Also
we're
got out
the
of
same
school.
daughter. We're like, wait, she's with me half time.
This is complicated.
Yeah. I'm like, what are you paying in child support? Because I also have that daughter.
You said something very interesting in one of your Instagram reels, and it was from one of your specials. And you had an audience member come up on stage, and they said, what was it? Love was not really expressed in my house.
Yes.
And you looked at them, and you kind of like aghast, and you said, "What else is there? Like, what was expressed in your home?"
I would say comedy, definitely. That was a normal thing, and I didn't realize how used to it being normal it was when I would just be like that in any household or anywhere and be weird to people versus, like, why aren't we all laughing at this? And, they might have had a very religious household that doesn't talk about anything beyond that, or they, there's a controlled thing, or the kids there couldn't say their emotions or whatever. And here I am just Jim carrying in their house. Right. So, yeah, it's an interesting thing. I didn't feel much connection to dad. I would say through mom. My mom became my best friend. It was really weird. My teachers and my mom were much more my friends than kids. And I also realized I didn't watch cartoons or do kid things. I didn't have toys that much. My favorite thing was watching Evening at the Improv and, bonding with the highest, what I would consider at the time, the highest frequency of authority that I could. And that helped me a lot because I always, as a stand-up, for instance, bonded with the headliners the most, or the people that I wanted to be like, right? So I started in Seattle and was best friends with the headliners there. And then when I moved to LA, I was closest to the headliners in LA. And that created a world for me that level of good is normal, that you can kill as hard as, at the time, man, Dane Cook.
Yeah.
I was working nightly at the Laugh Factory in 1999, 2000 with Dane Cook, name it, Howie Mandel, Bill Burr, Daniel Tosh. Like, these were people I worked with nightly. And I think that because I saw that level of killing as normal and I didn't reject it, I didn't go, oh, they think they're so great and walk away. That made me really good.
I get asked all the time, what is my attachment style? What is my attachment style? What is my attachment style? So I have finally launched the attachment assessment. This is not a short quiz that just spits out an answer after 3 seconds. This is a thorough, in-depth, science-backed assessment. Check it out on my website, adamlanesmith.com, and learn your attachment style, the severity of what you're dealing with, and some next steps you can take right now to build very secure attachment. So laughter and comedy, it has made you feel safe in your earlier life.
It's weird because I thought it was my dharma. I thought it was my childhood calling to be a stand-up comic. And I think that the thing that truly drove it was not getting hurt. Right?
So what would you change then?
And I think that, what's that?
What would you change then? If that wasn't your calling, what would you have done differently now that you know your calling?
I think that almost all of our callings as childhood are some type of, there's things we have that are dharma, but you're so developing at a way that you think it is, but like maybe you just did something and a parent liked you for a second and now you're like, I want that liking more. And so you do it more. You know what I mean? And now you're naturally good at it and it feels good and you feel a connection and you feel seen. But it does make you wonder, like for me, I was like, oh, it's natural for me to be a stand-up comic. It's what I do. It's what I am. But when I now look at it objectively and go, well, it was also me not getting hurt. It was me making sure dad paid attention to me. It was me being relevant to a parent. And so I'm like, I don't know the level of what of this was truly my soul's calling and would have happened if I was Kyle in any other family, or was me actually trying to survive without knowing it, right? Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
And I also think that also created me from moving from an introvert to an extrovert.
You were originally an introvert.
I think I was. I have a lot of memories of being in my room and like playing with model toy cars as a kid and like building things like that, like building something. And then I think one day my dad spanked me in my room and I think that I needed to go downstairs and entertain now to make sure he doesn't come up into this safe space that I am. And so I think that actually created an extroverting person that's like on and performing and see me, dad, you know.
My goodness. What is your relationship, if I can ask, what's
Sure.
your relationship like with your dad today?
Well, he's really sick. He's had cirrhosis for probably 6 years now. And it's, you know, nice, but it's not, I'm not close to him. We'll text each other or say hi for a few minutes once every other month, maybe. And I'm all over the place on how I feel about that. You know, it's a weird thing one time I was literally talking to Louis Anderson, the comedian, about this. And I said, and that wasn't to name drop, it's just, I want to give him credit for it. My dad, this is a really interesting thing. I said to Louis, my dad was in the house, but he was always in his head. And Louis said, then he wasn't there. And I thought it was a weird thing because you start to think, okay, this is really trippy. It's almost worse to have a dad there that's not present, because at least if he wasn't at all in the house, I could understand that I was abandoned. But if I see the physical dude standing there, I don't get to know that's what happens. So there's a constant ongoing, I'm going to open him. I'm going to shift him. You know what I mean? So it's almost worse in a way because it's like he's not there, but you think he is. At least if he wasn't there at all, I'd have the clarity my dad wasn't there. You know, there were things that were, there were some moments of bonding and some things there, but I think that it's a weird thing because if you have a dad that's not present and you're a man, like there's a part of you that really doesn't quite know what a man is.
Yes.
And I actually think I learned how to be a man from my mom. And I think my mom had problems with men. Like I remember once the news was on and they showed a baseball team fighting. And I remember vividly my mom going, God, men are so dumb. And me being like, totally. And forgetting I am one.
So did that impact your relationships in the future? That like imprint of maybe an absent father, then, you know, your mom obviously being frustrated and, you know, upset about that. The family unit that's out of balance. What did that show up as?
It showed up in a lot of ways. And me almost thinking men are so dumb.
Is that why you could make fun of them? Was that maybe something that helped you kind of make fun of them, help them understand maybe some parts that didn't quite make sense during your comedy days?
Maybe. I think that it was just, as far as relationships were concerned, I think that it made me, first of all, attracted to women that hated men.
Oh.
Right? Because my mom,
my
that's all I
goodness.
knew was home. I would be attracted in my 20s to a woman that was cynical about me. My mom also at times felt cynical about my career. Like I'd be like, Mom, I had this huge gig. I'll never forget when I...
But are you a doctor?
Well, it wasn't that, but it was like I said, Mom, I'm on Jimmy Kimmel tonight. I did a sketch on Jimmy Kimmel. And she said, what's it pay? And there wasn't a good job or I'm so proud of you thing that I think I was scraping for. She was proud of me and my mom loved me very much. But I think that I also felt inside like, this'll do it. She'll be so proud of this. And the most excited I felt she was when I would do a gig in the town she lived in Seattle, and I would sell my CDs afterwards and come home with a wad of cash. And my mom would be so excited to count it. And like, look at what, then all of a sudden
But
I
that's
felt
a safety thing,
unseen.
right? The reason why a woman, especially if she's raising, kids kind of on her own, spiritually, emotionally, physically, even for them, that's a safety thing. Having that big wad of cash, having her son come home, giving that stability.
Yeah.
And if you picked up your traits from her in terms of masculinity, that's probably the key to that, right?
Right.
That is stability. You're okay. We have enough to eat. You're going to be safe. You're making money. If something happens to me, you're still going to be okay.
I saw it as more like a giddy thing. And because I was her son and she's a mom versus like my wife, I didn't hear it as safety as much as like, this is the reason I matter. Do you get what I'm saying? And I'm not saying she said that. I'm saying that's how my story created it. Right. So when I'm suddenly like, I was suddenly excited to show her like, look how great this went and look how these sales went and look what happened. Right. So when she would suddenly have this giddiness as she counted the 20s from the gig I did that weekend, I'd feel like I'm loved.
Performance, right? High value, right? High value everything.
Right. That's the lie I think that we're all in is, first of all, that we're loved conditionally, right? Yeah. That I'm loved for what I do is a lie.
Okay.
That I'm loved for that. I mean, I think almost every business is built out of trauma, right? Like my comedy career was, right? Like there's a guy that out there that probably was bullied by someone is like, I'll show them they're wrong. They said I'm not going to be anything.
But actually it makes you want to fight back. Yeah, you're probably right that every business is based on trauma. Talent is based on trauma, but that's the demonstration of the human will to like improve, survive, grow. Like that triggers it oftentimes. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs I know, all of them have troublesome backgrounds. Very, very few people, if any, actually have a great childhood. They just don't know. They don't really know the reason why they have to push so hard, because this is not easy. Traveling is not easy.
So this is why the more aware we get, the more a lot of these businesses will collapse, because they're built in a way, they're still necessary in some ways, but a lot of them were built on a lie.
So it's like an emotional avoidance of that.
The lie of I'm not enough has created a lot of things. And what happens when we start to do inner work and realize we are enough? Now some of those things will collapse, but so many new things will build, but it's out of calling and out of God or out of a next step or out of a revelation or out of expansion. I mean, unconsciously, the amount of things that have been created, relationships that are created out of unconsciously, don't spank me, don't abandon me, don't yell at me. And that's why a lot of these things fall apart so much, is because they're all built on trauma. And I think that one of the things I'm on this planet to do is get people to see that, because we don't understand there still will be things created, without that. There will be things created because it's what you want to experience versus what you want to avoid. And so that's kind of
pain versus desire. But every research that's ever been done on marketing, on sales, on motivation, fear is a bigger driver. Right? But so in order for you to be able to get into desire-driven motivation, you have to be able to shut down the fear centers, or we can't think. So how do you shut down the fear centers?
Heal the fear, because it's literally based on a lie. All fear is based on a lie.
What's the lie?
Well, in other words, you have to investigate it. But if you do something, if I work with someone, they're like, they have a thing, I'm not enough, blah, blah, blah. It might stay unconscious in there until we go deeper. Mm-hmm. But it's not until you really sit and listen and investigate that someone will realize something and feel tears or feel a revelation about themselves, right? So I don't know if you've seen me work with people, but that's kind of a main thing that I do, is that a lot of times someone will have something in there and they'll feel this thing. And the more we investigate it, it's always stuck to something else. It's like attached to something deeper. Like there's this, in my eyes, like I kind of think of 2020 in particular as the beginning of us realizing so basically picture this, before 2020, it's almost like everyone had, as far as their consciousness is concerned, a one-story beautiful house. And it's this amazing, beautiful house here, and it's perfect. And then 2020 happens, and all of a sudden, all of our patterns change. You're not able to go to a restaurant as easily. You can't travel as much. You're staying at home. If you're in the store, you're suddenly introverted because you got a mask on, right? So what happens is people start to go inward because they can't do things the way that they're used to doing it, to distract them from seeing more. So 2020 is an example to me of a time where all of us collectively in one way or another changed our patterns, looked within, took stock of things, and that began something that caused them to look deeper. And it turns out there's an attic under this one-story house. The good news is you have a bigger house than you thought. The bad news is the attic is full of rats and trauma and darkness. And so under this, in our bodies, most of us were living here, right? And 2012 maybe was the beginning of living to here. And then you get to 2020 and it's like, okay, I'm going to look at the shame in here because I've just been achieving and doing things on this kind of shallower level. And a lot of people lately say things like, I wish it was like 10 years ago. I wish it was like 20 years ago. And I go, well, the factor of why 20 years ago was better was only that your lens was smaller. And you were, the shame and the darkness and the pain.
Yeah, but the pain has also gotten greater since then, significantly. We see this
because it's seen, that's it.
Well, because it's seen, but it's also because it's experienced. I think we're much more dependent on our intimate relationships, on our, on our girlfriends, on our wives, and our fiancés now than we might have been 20 years ago, before the internet, before the family system fully collapsed. So once you're one-on-one with this one person and, you're distant from everybody else, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you really start seeing the trauma there. You feel like you're supposed to have this connection with somebody and you just can't. And we're seeing so much frustration happen inside Adam's practice, inside just all of the internet space is starting to scream about it. They want to bond, they want to connect. They're trying to do that with at least one person. Maybe not even your whole family, just one person they're falling in love with, they're sexually attracted to, and they can't. And that is like a universal experience that everybody in the world is going through now.
So a way I see it is, a lot of trauma is coming to light. And the trauma that's coming to light was more dormant under our circumstances before. In other words, it was always there, but it was hidden, right? So that right now, a lot of people are feeling a lot of fall aparts right now. A lot of people are, in 2020 and beyond, I think there have been more and more people not connecting with people they used to be close with. Family members. I mean, the amount of clients I've had in the last 5 years that their mom doesn't talk to them because they had an argument about the jab, or that, they don't, it's becoming more and more normal it's almost as if God is removing little addictions and connections from you to make you finally have to look at the trauma that was there anyway. So a lot of people are scared to lose something. This person can't break up with me. Well, okay, if they do, what happens? Well, whatever was under that, in other words, your relationship that was connected to avoid loneliness will suddenly collapse and loneliness will come up, right? And so to me, a lot of us are being faced with, and a lot of people are healing it now, the deepest trauma they've ever had that almost was dormant and created a character that had these attachment issues or had these stories or had these, if you get a C in math as a child and your dad grounds you or spanks you or abandons you or whatever, you might create a character that gets straight A's. And you might think that's you, but it's not. It's what you created.
It's also a part of you. That's the complicated part. It's not entirely not you either, right? There's parts of you that are in that character. There's parts of you that continue. There's parts of you that transform. There's parts of you that don't want to leave. Like, the reason that character exists is because that character keeps you safe. And after a certain point, like, it has to be retired. I think a lot of people have.
I think we actually agree.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have this mentality, and this is, going back to your point, to your earlier point, where we had that dark, night of the soul. And people say, a part of me has to die means all of me has to die. It's like, no, it actually doesn't even have to die. It just has to be retired. There's a big difference between saying, I don't need you, and I don't no longer need you, right? And so I don't need you means that you have to get out of my mind, of my soul right now. Say, I no longer need you. You can take a rest, whatever this personality is, whatever this character is. You can be here. You don't have to be here. It's up to you. I'm not kicking you out, but you can now, take a back step, and we now got this, something else has taken over. That is actually a big step in security that I actually learned from Adam. Because I had a lot of avoidant attachment coming in. I actually started working with Adam years and years ago after a divorce. And a lot of it for sure is trauma connected to family, connected to experiences, but also connected to these characters, right? And there's a bunch of questions that Adam was asking me specifically around how those characters worked and helped bring them to light.
So I really like what you're saying, and this is a good perspective because so for reference, I was a marriage and family therapist for many years, and in the therapy world, there's this idea called prescribing the problem.
Mm-hmm.
When you see somebody and they hold on to an addictive behavior and they won't let it go, it's destructive. You can try to separate them from it, but they won't. So instead, you just say, "Hey, you know what? Do that 10 times more than you're currently doing it. Let's see what happens."
Mm-hmm.
And when they do, they're like, "Yeah, I'm going to do it." And they do it. And then all of a sudden, it's like when you get caught smoking one cigarette and they make you smoke the whole pack kind of thing. They used to do that to us when we were little kids. All of a sudden, you don't want to do it anymore because you see this is horrible.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is over the last couple of decades at least, I'm thinking when the iPhone was released and we started binging dopamine and social media, we saw human relationships got replaced. The biochemistry, your oxytocin that you're supposed to get, bonding,
Yeah.
your serotonin release telling you this is fulfilling. All of that got replaced with this little nightmare rectangle where you can just watch the world collapse in real time and pretend that you have social relationships with dopamine.
Right.
And as we flooded, I think we went through a period of collective euphoria where everyone was just so happy and so pumped. But as you said, 2020 hit and everybody burned out.
Yeah.
I'm seeing across social media so many of my people coming in, they're leaving comments and they're like, I'm 24. Like I go to work, I occasionally see a friend, I date, it's disappointing. Am I supposed to do this for the next 60 years till I die? This is it?
Is that all there is?
This is all there is?
Yeah.
For 60 years? People are burned out. Prescribing the problem, I think, has got us through it. And now what next?
Well, and that's such a great question because the real truth is, as you do conscious work and you go inward and you work on yourself, everyone's catching this linear thing that we were taught we're supposed to be about getting the job, the right relationship, and dying. Doesn't make sense. There's so much more to life than what we were taught and what life taught us, and especially like in the 40s and 50s, where people were, a lot of people just got in relationships and they were in those things 70 years. And if you talk to those grandparents that had those relationships, they can't talk about their emotions. Right. And the amount of times I do inner work with people and whatever, and they're like, yeah, my great grandpa was a raging abusive alcoholic and none of us could talk about it. So it was like the trade was all connection and no inner work and no expansion and no truth. And that is being traded right now, where the collapse of I'll stay with everyone in my life and will always be there for everyone to stay connected to each other. First of all, social media made it impossible because you have 10,000 friends and you just can't catch up with everybody. But as that falls apart, this unveiling of all the lies that are sitting in our body starts to form. And one thing I noticed in this time is a lot of people, all kinds of addictions don't work anymore. Like they'll notice right away, like I'll get drunk and I feel so off and never want to do it again. And even the addictions of next step entrepreneurial decisions, like the amount of people that are like, I'm going to start my business tomorrow. And then the next day happens and it's like a year passed and they're like, never mind, I don't care about that. And you'll realize these are little fixes to pain. It's like, I feel off right now. So my ability to start my business, my ability to write my book is my solution. And the next day you're like, it doesn't work. So the amount of things that people are trying to start in order to not feel pain, those collapse now because the driver's still that pain. And I feel like in the 50s or something, or even the 80s, that might have worked. You know what I'm saying? Like there's an insecurity, but they don't even know it's there.
and in the 80s, we weren't so oversaturated with massive levels of cortisol. People were stressed, but it wasn't an endless flood making your eyes bleed.
Yeah.
And then they weren't so oversaturated with dopamine. You had to work hard to get dopamine kind of back in. You had to actually go out and try to do something about it. Yeah. Right? You had to at least go to the corner store and pay $5 or something like that for an inappropriate magazine or a cigarette or a bottle of pop or something like that. Now you can DoorDash anything to your home. Everything's delivered. Yeah. So it's overly available, but there's one thing I've loved about your work in particular, and watching you work with people and they're laughing and you can get people to come up and like laugh about the most agonizing truths that they've probably never been able to verbalize out loud before in their
Yes.
life. Like they can laugh and say, I haven't spoken to my daughter in 10 years, or my
Yeah.
dad never loved me. And they can laugh about it.
Yeah.
And and you see it, and it's not a dissociative type of laughter, right? Like
Yeah.
deflective, maybe that you might have grown up with, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, to me, life is hilarious. And I think we were talking about this before we were recording, but what was really interesting was leaving the comedy world and going into the self-help spiritual world was trippy, because the comedy world, my experience was a desire to speak truth big time. Like we're all saying truth, but there was so much darkness in it. Like the amount of comics I would hang with at backstage, and they're eventually asking me for cocaine or something, and I didn't do that. And I just felt like the audience would be drunk and all these different things, and that's fine. I don't have judgment for it, but I was like, we're saying truth, but there's kind of this depressing sadness
Yes.
with it, which is also fine. But I also found there was a skepticism about optimism. There was a skepticism about self-help. There was, and I had no idea how much that skepticism would play out until I got into things like Tony Robbins and spirituality. And all of a sudden I was an instant fraud to the comedy world, or some of them, not all, but it was almost like self-help, and the truth doesn't exist in self-help. It's all a scam. And so it was a weird thing. And then I go to the self-help world, and there was a lot of it that was BS, and there was a lot of it that was a scam. And the authentic comedy part wanted to come play. And I found that also the self-help world found comedy to be almost a threat to how much we need to be here and just be real. And this person's going through this thing.
Too many therapists. You walk in and you want to sit down, and they have this story.
Yes.
And they tell me the worst moment of your life. And you tell them, and then they sit there and they go,
And you just made it so much more of a big deal.
Yes.
Yes.
And then they just want to sit there and stare at you in silence for 30 seconds after you say this, and you're just sweating, and they go, and how did that make you feel? And there's no levity. It makes it so much worse.
Yes.
And now you never want to talk about, you didn't want to talk about it in the first place. Now you never want to bring it up again. Right. And that was the power when I saw you laughing with people about that moment. Because laughter, I mean, you know what it does to the brain. It
totally
those endorphins, all the chemical rush, all the goodness that you get, so that then you can process those horrible things in a light mood that you've never felt before. It's a new way of processing.
We did an event 2 weeks ago, and it was so awesome. It was called Boundaries, and it was really good. It was not only boundarying things that don't align, habits that don't align. It was even boundarying emotions that you use to cover up other emotions. It was really incredible, but it was also hilarious. And it was weird because we're talking about major trauma in these people, like people talking about when they were abused as a child, or, as a child, whatever. And you would never think that's what this is about if you walked in, because it was also absolutely hilarious. And to understand that it's not a dismissing or a diminishing, it's a seeing it through a lens that you've never seen it through, and not imprisoning yourself anymore. And one example of a moment that happened that was so unbelievable was this woman in the audience was talking to me about, she had a sister, and basically her sister's dad died. There was a stepsister, right? So her stepdad died, and the dad, they were working on stuff. They had all these issues, and the dad ended up at one point wanting this woman, the stepdaughter, to have his Escalade, the car. And she had a hard time receiving it because the sister, was the legit daughter of the guy, she felt would be jealous of it, right? And so I actually realized this woman's main problem was a problem with receiving. That if I receive something, I don't deserve to receive something because if someone else has something worse, then I don't deserve to receive. And I realized with that logic, no person except for the person on the planet who has it the worst can receive anything. And I'm like, who's that person, by the way?
Right.
Like the second worst on the planet, whatever. You got nails in your eyes and you're on fire and you're just constantly being abused every second and you have no money, whatever. They don't have a right to feel anything because that guy over there has an extra nail and a needle in their butthole, and they all can't receive because of this. But this brought up this point where I had the woman in her receiving tell us about the Escalade, right? And so she got up and you just felt her shame and her shyness, right? She just like, it's a nice, like she's apologetic for getting a free car. And I said, now let me tell you something. If you went to the Price is Right, what happens at the Price is Right is the producers meet every audience member before they go in. And the ones that are the most open, receiving, excited will be the ones they pick. If you were in line, they wouldn't pick you at all. And I said, I want you to see God as Price is Right producers. And so I had her suddenly, and we turned the whole room into the Price is Right. The audience started jumping up and down and everything like that. And this woman, like, I go, you want an Escalade? And she starts screaming and everything like that. And we're playing Price is Right music and talking about the show and everything like that. And her state changed. She was so happy. She won an Escalade, right? She really did get an Escalade and had to receive it. And then in that state, I said, what about your sister? And she goes, she'll get over it. And it was like the best moment because, and this was, by the way, the beginning of a revelation of why things can work really well. If you understand when you're speaking or you're coaching someone or whatever, that it's not only you doing it, but like God is the room and you are expressing through her now. And I don't mean it egoically. I mean, like, there's something really powerful that I was realizing and talking to Amber, my fiance, about on the way here, is that the best speakers hold enough space that the other person is just as much the star, because it's not about me looking like I can coach. It's like the room starts to change and you start to realize God is working through all of this and in a way through you. It was just crazy because the timing of them all of a sudden becomes amazing. The comedy that comes through the whole room. I mean, we were dying and it just wrote itself because there was nothing planned, you know? And more as I see this, I find that, I don't know, God is trying to take care of everything. And I don't necessarily mean a specific type. I just mean the now and whatever, when our ego gets out of the way, is writing amazing stuff. And what you realize is healing happens through sadness and comedy.
So let me ask you this. Are there any points in life where you're actually full on dead serious? It's not even funny anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did that happen?
I would say that this might sound like a nothing arbitrary sentence, but if I see myself as a comedian, I'm limited. If I see myself as a speaker, I'm limited. If I see myself as the now,
okay,
there's an infinite supply of things and I have the tools of all the other things. But I'm not attached to it has to be funny. I'm not attached to they have to cry to release it, you know. But
so do you and Amber have serious conversations? Like
all the time.
Okay, what do those usually go like?
They're beautiful. They're a hearing. They're on the way here. We were doing Byron Katie work. Do you know who Byron Katie is?
No, actually, if you could tell me.
She's an incredible speaker, and she asks these 4 questions to everybody. The 4 questions are basically, is that true? Can we absolutely know that that's true? How does that belief make you feel? And then what's a turnaround? So in other words, if a woman is working with Byron Katie and says, my husband is supposed to tell me he loves me, she'll say, is that true? And she'll say, maybe yes. And she'll go, can we absolutely know that that's true? And what Byron Katie's work is about not being at war with what is, because he's not supposed to tell her that he loves her because he's not. In other words, that's what's true, is he's not, right? So when you go, my spouse never listens to me and he should listen to me, well, he's not listening to you, so he's not supposed to listen to you. So you start to realize my argument basically is all within me. So they go, how does that belief make you feel? And you realize the pain is the belief. The pain is that I believe that they're supposed to do that versus that they aren't. And the pain that we feel is our resistance to what is. And that, I think, is what my work is too. When something happens, if I decide it shouldn't happen, I'm literally insane. And so when you start to do what they call the turnaround, which is like, I'm supposed to listen to me, or I'm supposed to tell myself I love myself, or I'm supposed to tell him that, or whatever. Now, people think that that might be a license to stay with an abusive person, but the truth is you undo yourself from your stuff and from freedom make really amazing decisions from there. So I say that because Amber and I, on the way here, had a talk, and we were just talking about things like, what are our beliefs that we have still remaining in our body?
Now, is this your first engagement with Amber? Did you have like past relationships, maybe past marriages that went serious, or is this like the first important one?
Ask that again.
You and Amber, is this the first like serious relationship you have, or do you have past relationships?
I mean, Amber's the best relationship I've ever had, and she's
I would absolutely hope so. Yes.
Yeah, she's incredible and the right match for me. And
But you had some practice ones. It sounds
I've had relationships in the past, definitely. But I would say this hits a consciousness that really fills my soul. And I think that what makes our relationship so great is our number one desire in the hierarchy is expansion.
Okay.
So the relationship is a tool to help us move into our truest self versus I'm not saying there isn't attachment there, but our number one goal isn't, don't leave me no matter what, or I'm scared you'll hurt me, nearly as much as I have this fear. I want to find the truth. And I believe that, do you know who David Dida is?
Yeah. David
Dida has this great thing about the 3 stages of relationship. Have you ever heard it? The first stage is, I need someone to be happy. Okay, that's an unconscious thing, right? I'm not happy unless someone's there. The next stage is when you're all independent. Like, I don't need anyone, right? Look at my boundaries. I'm not with anybody and I'm fine. At one point, the third stage is when you realize that my wholeness on my own isn't quite enough because I can't see beyond me. So a third relationship stage is, I don't need anyone, but I want to know God. I want to be taken to God. I want you to take me past me. So I think both of us are major fans of that third one, where we know we can be independent, but can you show me what I can't see in me now?
Okay.
Because I've done so much inner work, and so has she. I mean, we live the inner work, but I want to be taken past me.
Okay. So through the relationships you've had, what was your character act like? How did you develop? How did you grow? How did each relationship transform you?
Wow. Oh, I mean, I had a relationship for 4.5 years in my 20s. And I don't think that expansion was my number one goal then. I think it was back then I was much more unconscious and please see me. And,
most of the couples who come to me when they're in disaster, it's usually let's be together and give each other good feelings till one of us dies. And that's the purpose of the whole relationship. It sounds like that was probably.
Yeah. Just like that, that attachy stuck thing that I don't know.
I got somebody.
Yeah.
Make them stay.
Yeah. I think that was, that was 20s.
So that was 20s, 4.5 years.
Like 20s is it, because I think 27 was the beginning, and I think it is for most people. 27 is the beginning of like some people awakening. It's
self-realization.
Almost like self-realization kind of seems to start a lot at 27. It's like you don't know there's 2 yous. You don't know until that happens. So 27, you start dabbling that, and you think maybe you're the only one having it for a while, and and then you get in relationships after that, and if they're not expanding, for me, that's hard. If they're not interested in that and they're kind of in their addictive state while I want to do that. And I think that's happened a few times.
Have you had any past like marriages? Anything?
Never been married.
Interesting.
Been engaged a few times.
Okay. So what was the big stepping stone for you with this one, if I may ask? There's big engagement.
Well, here's one enormous difference. I finally was truly in a place before I met her where I was completely fine and preferred to stay single the rest of my life. Like, in other words,
as soon as you stop looking, you find somebody.
I remember hearing the late, great Norm Macdonald in an interview, and someone was asking him, you must, like, after shows, like, go out with a bunch of women and all this stuff. And Norm Macdonald was like, oh no, why would I do that? No.
Sounds like work.
He's like, I go home and I go to bed and I don't have to deal with anything later. And I felt myself like feel and become aware that I felt like this permission. I got excited about that. I was like, that's the highest truth for me. Because up until this relationship, I think I had a subconscious belief that a relationship's an arbitrary thing. It's a invisible lines that I've just decided you're the one that can be mad at me all the time. Like, it's this thing that makes you, it's just a weird thing to just assign. Now I have to process every decision I make through you. And so in the past, I often said to people, and I don't believe in relationships, but I still wanted to be with people, So I would get in it and then just feel stuck and feel like I could process things better alone, and then never really truly honored it. And I think it was probably within a few months before I met Amber that I felt completely like excited about being my daughter's father and just being completely by myself and having less drama in my life, having, all that stuff. And then I met Amber and was like, I love her so much. And aside from her being the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, I think that one of the things I noticed was when we started talking, I felt, and I can't explain this, but it was the most amazing thing. I felt my best friend. I felt like my thing in a relationship, I always wanted I want us to be contained and us to talk through things first. And I felt in the past, I've gotten in relationships with people that felt closer to everything outside of the house. You know what I mean? Like almost strangers could get more out of the partner than me. And we couldn't work through things. And I was like, that's what I want. I want to contain. And I was right. Like, she's amazing.
It sounds like you had built a life that was so fulfilling that the only way someone was going to get in there was if they made life somehow more fulfilling than it already was.
That's weirdly a thing I said yesterday. Like, that's exactly right. It can be hard to get in a relationship if your life has been a ton of fun and a ton of joy. I mean, headlining club after club, doing movies, 10 Things I Hate About You, not another teen movie, having crazy abundance and career and joy and traveling and all this stuff is fun. It is like living in Vegas and hitting jackpot all the time. And then when you bring someone in, it's like, can you match this? And she can. She really can. And one of the most beautiful things about her is if we have an off moment, like there is an actual interest and investigation on both of us. That how did I contribute to this? What do I need to learn? What's trying to die here or leave or dissolve or be made a friend, like you were saying?
Sure.
That isn't me now, but like.
So how are you guys getting ready for your marriage? Because something is going to have to change when you get married. First year, second year, third year, 10th year. And you're on year 16 now, 17?
16, wedding anniversary, yeah.
There you go. So one thing that Adam tells me is that there are stages in the marriage, right? It takes you about 3 years to build a good foundation for a marriage, just the foundation. Then it's about, 7 years in total before you really get to know the person. And it's like 10 when you really start building that basis. You know? So that's a huge, huge thing. I can barely envision that.
This is a funny thing, but I move so with the moment
that
I can hear those things and have them there. But I also feel time is so different than 20 years ago that like, I don't know if this makes sense, that I'm like, I feel like we don't know what's going to happen next week. Like scheduling a gig 6 months from now inside, I'm like, as long as we're all alive, and like there's like such a weird thing. So it's funny because I don't know what applies to me when I live so differently than the world. Like, I don't know if the 3 year and 7, like, when they take a study and they find when people eat this way, 500 people have this, it's like you're testing the average unconscious people, like.
What about all the outliers? What about all the exceptions? What about all the conditions?
If, like, for instance, if you say to someone, like, if you want to be an artist, it takes blah, 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 I get that. But then, like, tell Michael Jackson that. It's like there's a different thing, right?
Yes.
So there's different ways that it applies. And no, I'm not saying I'm Michael Jackson, but I'm saying like there is a way that I see the world that I do think is very different. I have no attachment to circumstances almost at all. Like, I don't feel happier if a football team does anything or there's some attachment, but I just feel like I'm so fascinated by the expansion of what I truly am. So I don't know what applies where, but I'll check in with you at 3 years and 7 years.
Let me know.
I'm putting it on my calendar right now.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm curious about, what do you expect this challenges that these guys might have in the following years? I'm curious, what do you think would be like the biggest sticking point?
You want me to just dissect his brain right now, right here in front of him?
Sure.
Okay.
Kyle, if you're down for that, I'd love to hear that.
No, so it sounds like what you've done is discover really, truly secure attachment in yourself and with the people around you, and that's amazing.
I'm working on it.
It sounds like you have.
It still exists, but I mean, definitely one rule I have is like, I don't want to fill pain with something. In other words, what I mean by that is, here's a great example. In 2014, there was a girl I broke up with. We were not together, but I missed her so much. It was aching to not be with her. And that's why I knew I couldn't call her, because she would now be like a cigarette. She would be filling a void.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't an expansion-based connection. And so if I have a thing and it just hurts, there's a part of me that goes, that means it needs to be looked at directly on my own, right? So that does create more and more secure attachment. Like if the big pain is that you think you're dead if someone abandons you or doesn't hear you or that you're not loved. Does that make sense?
It does.
And so one rule I have is if it's painful, I really work on, okay, that's my issue, because it's not expansive, right? So that, I think, is moving me more towards secure attachment. But I do think there's still pain if I'm in an argument with someone and they turn around and walk out. Oh God, it's stabbing. It's everything. But more and more, I'm getting to a point where it's like, okay, I'll just meditate on it and feel horrified for a second, and it'll turn into tears. One thing that's crazy about me in that is, I mean, my life is just transcending pain. I mean, it's every day. So if something feels off, there's an inner work and what could this mean, and a revelation. And I feel like it's making me more and more connected to what I am. The number one goal I have in my life with everything is to know what I truly am. Some people have the intention of, I want to affect and impact 50 million people. Man, I find that if I just know what I am, it's more effective than having those egoic goals that are, to me, egoic. Like, I got to change this or I got to do this. Because everyone trying to change the world wants to change it to how they see it. I mean, ask a Democrat and a Republican what a changed world looks like, and they're completely different. So the inner work is the greatest way to change it versus trying to change it on the external. So for me, my whole thing is I want to know what I truly am. This underlying intention has changed my life. Everything that's good is moving me towards what I truly am, and everything that's bad is moving me towards what I truly am and showing me attachments and stuck things. So I do think it's moving me to secure attachment. Sorry for the tangent.
No, that's wonderful. That's fantastic. You asked me what threats I see.
What challenges right, you would expect to have, because, well, Kyle's life is extraordinary.
I hear you. What the biggest one? Norovirus.
What's that?
Norovirus.
What's that?
Norovirus is, and I'll explain, but norovirus is just a really awful, painful, disgusting virus that you can get that just messes with your digestive system.
Oh my God.
Now, it's terrible and it's short term, but it's one of the most disgusting things you could have. And why am I bringing this up? Because in year 13 of my marriage with my wife, we were going through an amazing third honeymoon, reawakening. We had 2.5 kids, I think. She was pregnant with our third child at the time. And we just thought we were flying high. We thought we were growth minded. We were doing the inner work. We were sharing. It was just phenomenal experience. And then one of the kids came home with norovirus from somebody else, and it ended up lasting about 2 weeks. But in that time, it was so painful and so disgusting. We were sharing one bathroom at the time as a family. This is an awful story, but it tested us. It derailed the whole inner work. There were times where you're just laying there, and you can't get up off the floor, and the other person's feeling a little better. So when are we going to get back to the fun stuff? It's been awful for a week. When? And it just and there was a moment where it felt like it was never, ever, ever going to end. And why do I say this? Because sometimes it can go on for longer. It can be a month. It could be a cancer scare. It could be you get hit by a car and your back suddenly hurts all the time and you're always in really bad pain. What do you think will happen when one of you has to pause their inner work or their optimism? Maybe that's happened to you guys already. What do you think will happen when that day comes for you guys?
When we have to pause it?
When one of you has to pause your inner work, when one of you is less optimistic and a little more grumpy all the time.
Well, it's not only optimism, because I do think optimism's an escape in a way. It's just there is a me that goes, everything dark is just to heal us. Okay. So there's a me that, I got pretty sick a couple months ago and we were closer than ever,
Good.
Everything to me is for growth. Everything is something's trying to arise. It's so funny when you ask what should we look out for? I move into, I just think life is just so awesome and gets better and better that I'm like, how good can this get?
Interesting.
And it puts me on such a different frequency. And it's not that things won't arise, but I do think going, what do we have to avoid for me? It doesn't feel true to me. It's like I'm taking the freeway directly, and the question is like, what exit should he not take? It's like, well, I'll go past it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it like spiritual bypassing. I actually more and more think burying your head, like I'm the opposite of the world. Like people think that to not know what the news is saying is burying your head in the sand. I think watching the news is burying your head in the sand. You're disconnected from the infinite that's trying to happen here. And so much magic is trying to happen. And so I live much more in a world of how expansive and magical and good can this get? And I think I've done that every second of my life with my career. I've done that with this. It's made a crazy abundance. New York Times bestselling author, all these things form. But if I'm in the mindset of like, it's not saying that there won't be surprises and dark things, but they'll just present themselves. To me, if I'm like, okay, we're going into this and I'm aiming for how it could suck, like I'm like finding problems that aren't there.
Mhm.
It's to me like you put on your belt still. So I'm not saying that that's not there. You put on your seatbelt, but then you drive. And I don't have that mindset of like what could go wrong. And by the way, I'm also not scared of things going wrong. Like that also is okay. Like if we break up, that will be sad, but it will be our growth. If things don't work out, it'll be our growth. Like the truth is under all of that. Everything is okay. Creates so much more of a foundation for things to be so much better. Because the worst that happens is you find what it triggers in you and heal that. So everything is growth, but that's not a denialism of those things. It's like, I'll go right into the mud if it's there. But sometimes I think we create what could go wrong more than we need to too. Because I also am just like, God, this could be amazing. You know, I've been massively optimistic my whole life in certain ways. And it's weird because people be like, be careful. Like there was times in the past where I had a girlfriend that I thought was it and she was so great and everything like that. And my mom be like, be careful, you don't know or whatever. And then we broke up and I was really excited after that. And I'm like, I'm fine. It's great. Like now I'm free and a better one's coming.
Yeah.
So everything's good news, even if it's bad news, right? And
that awful experience I had with my wife definitely bonded us. We have that story.
Right.
Right. I think we can go through everything. It's Andre, I guess the way I took your question was, what trials do you have to watch out for to make sure you're smart during, I guess is how I took your question.
But how good could this get? How about that? How expansive and free could you be? How much joy could you feel? These are not spiritual bypassing. I actually think the other way is almost bypassing the joy that's trying to just happen for us. I don't know if that makes sense, but for me, I'm like, when we're constantly worrying that something could happen, that's just comes from experience in the past that hasn't been healed yet.
Should we dissect Andre and ask why he asked for the trials?
Yes, let's turn the coaching here.
I'm happy to do that. But to clarify, the reason for the question is kind of going back to your point. What happens when there is no time to do the inner work? Like the things, the frameworks that hold you guys in
what do you
this
mean?
connection.
There's no time. Everything's the inner work.
Well, everything's inner work, but let's say when you are taking care of, say, of a sick child, when you are taking care of a sick partner, when you are burdened with circumstance, when, let's say, you're under point of stress.
Do you think those are separate? Like, the inner work is separate from that?
Well, I can't think two thoughts at the same time. So if you're serving somebody and you're in active service,
if I have a sick
can do
child,
that.
let's go through it. If I have a sick child, okay, I'm doing it. What am I feeling right now? What's trying to emerge here? What are they feeling? What's God need more of? What is needing to heal? I'm triggered by this circumstance that I think shouldn't be happening. What argument am I in with the world right now that says this shouldn't be here? What inner child in me has decided to throw a tantrum that this circumstance is here? Everything is a gold mine, and they're all within the realm of the work. To me, it's not like the work is like homework that I now leave the life and go do this like a luxury on the side. Everything is God to me, and like just everything is life expanding. So, man, let me give you a crazy example. This thing where I was sick 2 months ago.
Sure.
Holy crap. Here's a story for you. Okay. So Amber and I are flying. We're feeling good. We're going through stuff. I decide out of nowhere, something in me calls me and says, I'm going to do a 10-day water fast, right? I'm going to go 10 days. I want to know what it's like.
No food.
No food at all. And then I started looking stuff up about it. And there's a thing called dry fasting, which means like you go a day or two without any water too. Sounds crazy, but there are people that are writing in the comments like, it changed my life. It works 3 times better than the water fasting. And there was a me that started the water fast. I get 2 or 3 days in and I'm feeling really good, right? But also my daughter's got sick at school. And I remember right before I started the damn fast, she coughed right into my face. And so on day 3, I start getting the flu and I start actually thinking it's like a keto flu, like my body is healing because of the thing. Now you got to know, every second I'm sitting here having dialogue. What could this mean? What am I feeling? This is everything to me. Circumstances are secondary to what is arising, right? So on day 4, do a full-on dry fast. And on day 5, I end up sick. And I do believe it was just from my daughter's school. It was separate. I got my hands on an ivermectin, and I didn't think about that ivermectin attaches to the food and goes out that way. I wasn't eating. So I'm sick. I took an ivermectin, and it wouldn't leave my system. I get to day 6 that night. I can't sleep, and I'm starting to go absolutely crazy. I'm going nuts. I don't know what the hell's going on. I feel all kinds of darkness. Now, let me tell you something. In this darkness, I noticed at like 4 a.m., because I'm not sleeping a second, I noticed there's a deep paranoia in me. Like, because I'm so vulnerable here.
Oh, you're not eating, you're not drinking, you're not sleeping. That's
I'm
pretty
not
natural.
sleeping. Yeah, but I think that it unfolded, it loudened a deep like paranoia that feels unseen by the world. The world's out to get me. I felt like this compassion for me that I didn't know was in there as I saw it. I get to day 7. I'm not sleeping again. I had 5 nights. Was it 5 nights in a row that I didn't sleep a second? I don't mean like that, I didn't sleep at a half hour. Like, 0. I both was getting insane. I was getting insane. I was sitting up and I would suddenly be in another room and not know how I got there. I was seeing stuff. I was getting kind of delirious things.
This was your norovirus, basically.
Yeah, this was, and let me tell you something, man. Amber is also a holistic doctor. She does acupuncture and Chinese medicine. She and I got so close and we're so connected and so loving. And this poor woman sat there while I literally wasn't sure if I was going to die. And at one point too, I still had my membership site that we have people on and we do calls. I did this one live call that we're talking at this point, 4 of the nights of no sleep. And I deliver this content that came through because I was so not distracted by anything. It was like God spoke this through me. And then I just cried a bunch and like got off the call and then went back to crazy. And then I put that video out and it was one of the most viral videos I had put out on YouTube. And then I really got to a point where I was like, I can't sleep anymore. And it brought a paranoia in. And I thought it was just the ivermectin, but I was like, I'm going to die. And I noticed in this vulnerability, there were people that I had issues with. And when I felt good, I reached out to one. And there was one guy that I used to be close with that I reached out to him. And he was just such an asshole. I'm sorry to say that. And it was almost like life was going, you need to let this go. I want you to hear the lessons I'm catching in this. It goes, you need to undo control of anything you can't control. Like life was saying, there was a me that noticed if I felt off, I was crazy and I felt crazy. And if I would like look up stuff online, I would go crazier. But if I lied in her arms and just paid attention to my breath, I stopped. And I was like kicking and stuff. I was crazy. My legs were kicking, all this stuff. If I didn't focus on any issue, anything with another person, anything someone could be saying online, what people are doing, my views, all the things I can't control, I went back to connected. It was almost as if this sickness was the purge of my attachment to circumstances, my attachment to my story, my attachment to my image, my attachment to past people I used to be connected with, and really creating a surrender. On the 10th day, I went to the hospital and they couldn't do anything. And then that night I got really bad again. I said, we need to go back. They put me on trazodone. Is that what it's called? Trazodone and a couple other things like that, and knocked me out in the hospital for 8 hours while they monitored stuff. I then went back home and slept in bed 24 hours straight. After 8 hours, I had 24 hours. I was getting, this sounds crazy, but I was getting glimpses. I would dream like this peace that I'd never felt that was more than just a dream. I felt this thing that was like a new world. After that, I recovered instantly, and I noticed I purged attachment to almost everything. Like a ton of me did die in that experience. So instead of me being like, I can't do inner work because this is happening, I'm like, what is happening? Because all of life is the inner work. You're never not in it. And that was a great example that brought Amber and I closer, that made me undo myself from attachment to stuff. Tried to fix stuff with people that really God was saying, don't fix with this person. You're not supposed to fix with this person. You need to let this person go, because there's a people pleaser in me that wants to stay connected. Dude, the sickness was like the doorway to me finding all of my problems or many of them. And ever since then, I felt free of reaching out to any of the people that I've fallen out with. I felt free of needing to heal things with others, because the revelation I had was I can heal issues with others with myself. I can literally heal an issue with someone I don't talk to anymore inside. I can feel the forgiveness and not need them to get it, because not everyone's doing the same work. So they are still in their resentment and they might not bring that back. So I started really getting that, it was almost like the sickness. And I believe in this time, you notice how many people are having a hard time sleeping right now. I think it's patterns trying to come to light. And it's everything is God talking to you, right? Dude, Amber had this last year, a lot of nights where she couldn't sleep. She would get 2 hours of sleep and then be up for like 3-4 hours and not sleep almost every night for a long time. She couldn't figure out what it was. And she's an expert on health. So she's trying to figure it out. And what is this? What is this? And she started uncovering a pattern of like, she instantly goes, what is this? And the Amber that has to take care of herself is almost in the way of God doing some healing. And one of the things we looked at was, what if it's coffee? Now, you might hear that and think I'm saying caffeine, because Amber only had one coffee in the morning. But Amber decided to let go of coffee and all of a sudden started sleeping. It wasn't because of the caffeine. It's because Amber in her past felt the most connected to her grandma, and her grandma drank coffee. And Amber actually connected to her grandma as a safety mechanism and felt a bond and an attachment to them. And when she had coffee unconsciously, she never had to grieve that grandma fully had died, and fully grieved that. So when Amber let go of coffee, Amber started feeling off that day, but slept that night, and feeling off that way and slept that night. And we talked a week later or so, and I did an event and we talked about it. And Amber went into the depths of the issues that she had from her childhood, and that her safety was her grandma. And she never really got, and her big wound was, I never got to say goodbye to my grandma. And when she realized the coffee was the mask, does this make sense?
I hear you.
And so she started bawling and saying goodbye to her grandma, and Amber sleeps every night now. And you get that, like, a lot of people aren't sleeping because there's stuff trying to come to light that is the wild mind, or the old safety mechanisms, the old protective mechanisms from your past. They're trying to come to light right now. And, I know someone else who's constantly at night feels all the regret, like they're alone with themselves at 1 a.m. They feel the regret about their past, and the regret. It's like when you're finally alone with yourself and off your screen, you finally, at 1 a.m., all this stuff comes to light. It's coming to light because it's ready to be healed. And it's healed by being seen. So for me, everything is the work, right? All of it is. I don't know what you think of that, but actually, I don't know what you feel about that.
Ooh.
Because feeling's different.
I'm confused more than anything.
Perfect.
I'll be honest
That
with you.
creates space for growth.
Yeah, I'll take it. I mean, having that focus internally is really good, I think. For me, the way that I tend to grow is more observing others go through their experience and being part of that experience, serving them in their experience. And spending too much time introspectively limits my ability to do that. So I feel like for me, my specific calling is to work more with people than to work on myself. I don't have that much of a curiosity internally. I have a much more of a curiosity of the way that I can be a part of somebody else's story. I know that's just because I'm different or...
Yeah, and I so celebrate that if that way works for you. My offer is you can only help people at the level you've helped yourself. So for me, I can't take someone past my own level of trauma. I can't, you know what I mean? Like, in other words, when you start freeing your own self, the level of liberation that you can be for others through the example and through the space is totally different than if I'm in a place of my own traumas, my own fears, and I'm trying to coach them. It becomes more intellectual and mental versus revolutionary or expansive, right? So if I got a bunch of deep wounds that I haven't looked at, and I'm coaching a bunch of other people, but I'm not also in the work myself, or I'm in the work, but it's second to them. This is me and not you. I get your way works. Then I'm capped on what I can offer. And
so what is that you offer when you are at your best? What is the core offer here that Kyle gives?
First of all, the space to understand that you're infinite, the space to have what's stuck inside of you actually heard so much that you see it and actually transcend it. The discovery that all of your pain is actually a lie, and that doesn't mean overlook it. That means investigate it, because it's a gold mine. Everyone's pain inside is a gold mine. And when someone's feeling off, I'm like, oh, what's there? But they got to be wanting it. You know what I mean? There's people that are not interested in having the work done on them, so I'm not going to do it. But if someone comes to me as a client, I mean, I've had probably, I don't know, at this point, 10 to 15,000 one-on-ones I've done with people and done huge theaters and all these things. You're working on people. I've had so much experience in the now can write everything better than the story of Kyle can. So one factor for me is 0 is planned. I can't do a 6-day event unless I have nothing planned.
Nice.
And then I literally
no agenda, not anything.
0.
Just show up.
Ask Amber all about it. She'll be with me. We'll be backstage, and I'm just talking to her. I'll pivot and go on the stage. The reason is the stage is no more profound than this moment, or the moment when I'm peeing, or the moment I'm on a date, or when I'm sitting on the couch. Our egos decide something is bigger than something else. Our egos go, whatever. If I'm on that TV show, that's good. And if I'm taking a nap, that's nothing. And the moment you get the now is the most profound thing. And it doesn't matter which thing you're doing in the now, like as far as how good or bad it is. This is really profound. So then that brought a me onto the stage that is just about here versus getting to an outcome. And if I'm open and allow what's happening to unfold, that's the big word there, unfold, then everything does its thing. And even things that seem bad do their thing. I have an example from an event, if you want to hear it, that's crazy. So I did a big 2-day event, and it was called Welcome to Deep Down. The reason it's called that is because people often say, when they're having a hard time, people always say, deep down, I know everything's okay. And then they go, but here's a bunch of complaining. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, wait, you already know everything's okay. You're talking like deep down is some summer home you're looking at from a distance, and this problem you're grabbing back onto is where you live. What if deep down is just your home, and you don't say deep down, I know everything's okay, but you just connect to deep down and everything's okay? So that was the event's title. And I really had to live it at this event because we had a 1,400 seat sold out event. We do day 1, and all kinds of insane synchronistic things are happening. Like, it's hard to explain, but one guy's doing this work, and I do this mention of someone that I saw in Syria, and then a kid goes to help the guy. It turns out that kid's from the same city in Syria, like that kind of stuff. So many things that the audience is just shocked, right? I can't believe how many synchronicities. When you get out of the way, life is just a bunch of synchronicities. You just see everything as like, the earth is helping me. The world's helping me. There isn't a me even. And we finished day 1 and I get a bunch of emails. People loved it and everything and want to tell me all this awesome stuff. One guy, it says, disappointing day 1. I click the video and it's this guy and he goes, hey, Kyle, I want you to, I'm at your event and I see all these things happening. And it's obvious to me you're planting the audience and it's obvious to me you set this up. And I don't know what you're setting up to sell tomorrow, but I work in reality TV and I know this is BS. And so he almost crapped his pants when day 2 started and I started doing content on his video and talking about what I felt about what he said. And then I brought him up on stage and I wanted to do inner work with him right there because I both wanted to talk about the trigger that I had being accused of planting people when I've never done that in my life. And at the same time, what's triggering him because he just said he works in reality TV and he does that, right? And the reason people are triggered about something is because they're doing what I do. That's a huge reason. I'll say to the audience, I'll say, okay, tell me 3 traits, real quick. Tell me 3 traits you hate when people do. What's a trait you have that you hate when they?
I hated when people chew out loud.
Chew out loud? Give me another one.
Lie. That bugs me. And multitask.
Now, isn't it weird he didn't say murderer?
Kind of comes with default.
He's fine
but
with
also
that,
conditionality.
as long as he's chewing with his mouth closed.
Conditionality. Under which
Like,
conditions are they murdering people?
Yeah.
Under no conditions should they be chewing out loud.
As long as they're truthful about it. You're like, this is what people like. I hate when people are late. I hate when people whatever. And it's like, as long as they're on time, I don't mind them stabbing others. Why do we not say murderer when you ask that? Because it's almost foreign to us because we're not murdering people. Right? So we get triggered more by little things that are in our body that we have done or we haven't forgiven ourselves for, or it's our trait, right? And so this guy is in the audience now, and now he's on stage with me, which suddenly showed him this isn't planned because he's on stage. And I said, can I work on you now? And he said, yeah. And I said, all right, is that open? He says, yeah. I said, so you're triggered by what I do because you think it's fake because you're more authentic than you're working. In other words, you work in reality TV, do things that aren't authentic, and you're triggered by the belief that I'm doing that. And he said, you're right. And I said, okay, I have a question for you. I said, yesterday we did an exercise where you wrote out what you truly want to be doing. You're not doing what you truly want to be doing. You're clearly bothered by inauthenticity at your own work. So I said, so what is it you want to do? Now, it was almost like God was ready to write the funniest thing in the world because his answer was, there's something I really want to do that I just feel like maybe is stupid, but I really want to do it. And I said, what is it? And he said, he literally said these words, I'm America's premier Meatloaf impersonator. He wants to impersonate the singer Meatloaf. Now, he really almost flipped when he said that. And a teammate ran out, handed him a microphone, put a spotlight on him. I run over to the piano and by ear start playing a Meatloaf song, Anything for Love, But I Won't Do That. And he starts singing into the microphone, and I would do, and I'm singing the woman's part, will you raise me up? And now here's the funniest part. At the end, roaring standing ovation. The whole show moved around this guy being triggered by my work. And the whole event became about that. And then the rest of the day, everyone accused him of being a plant. They said, dude, you made this up. There's no way Kyle knew the song on piano. There's no way you guys were connecting and singing that. There's no way you would just spontaneously get on stage in front of 1,400 people and do that. And he was like, no, this is real. And it was like God wrote such a better event because everyone learned everything from that event. But they learned it from life unfolding in front of them versus me showing up with a PowerPoint of lessons. The lessons that God had unfolded versus what I knew would happen. And if I had anything planned, there would have been no room for that. But it was the most shocking thing and was one of our biggest events. I mean, we sell the whole thing online for $20, by the way. They can see the whole 2-day event and watch this whole thing unfold. Welcome to Deep Down. It's crazy, right?
I think there's a kind of a predisposition you have to have in order to get into that event and take part. So, what are the 3 or 4 things that really block people from doing this work?
I think believing they can't, coming up with the 3 or 4 dispositions. I'm just kidding.
To not do this work.
I think that the factor is, are you open to there's more than you know? And I don't mean just through intellectual understanding. I mean, are you wide open to that you don't know anything? Because I don't know anything. And that's freedom. Like everything I know changes every day, and I discover something. And then life becomes this ride where you discover new things and you have a true belief, and then you realize that that's different now. It's one thing that's amazing to me to realize is you're not your beliefs, because you've believed one thing and then you believed an opposite thing at one point. And so you can't be your beliefs because they change. So anything you believe now, you might as well just throw it out or not get too caught in it or too attached to it. Because if something changes, it triggers your beliefs, which means you're wrong and you're not that. And so the ego gets really mad. But the more you're just open and to like, life show me, man, you can tap into the ethers and hear music in a new way and feel things and see things in a new way and create in a new way, right? So I think there's a group of people that come to our events that are excited and open to a discovery that they are aware might challenge how they thought everything would be.
They're open to the search, right?
They're completely open.
So you do so many different types of work. And now I'm just personally curious. Do you have particular principles that are immovable for you? That you say, this is a core nature of who I am, and I will always or I will never, like having those absolutes.
Are you going to say murder?
Yes, murdering. No, I think that's an interesting question. Well, I do believe that you're just light and love under all this, but that doesn't mean you won't feel your darkness, you won't feel your anger, you won't feel your pain. A quote that a friend of mine said that I've repeated that he said it and sometimes still gets attributed to me, but my friend Diego once said, whenever you let go of something, the only reason you're stressing is you can always measure what you will lose. You can't see what you'll gain. So letting go to me is, especially in the time we're in, more of an effective way to actually have results happen. In other words, the reason I think a lot of times results don't happen is you have a trigger in you that says, I'm nothing if it doesn't. So unconsciously, it stays stuck there. I believe this. I believe the outside is a complete mirror of the inside. In other words, your trigger about an issue outside is just trying to show you what's stuck inside. A great example is I had a one-on-one with a woman once. She was triggered because her mom hadn't spoken to her in like 7 or 8 years. Her mom won't speak to her. She won't speak to her. We did a one-on-one. We healed it. She was over it. She understood that it's perfect that her mom wasn't speaking. It's the beginning of her new life. She felt totally free. And at the end of the call, her mom called her. And I almost felt
10
like,
years.
What's that?
Like first time in 10 years.
Yes.
Wow.
And I've seen that so many times. It's like the thing that's stuck inside, it's like the second you let go of it, it's almost like it snaps over to them. Like I've had it where I'm like, okay, I healed this issue with that person and they call me and own their part or whatever. And there's times where the guy I was telling you about when I was sick, I tried to connect with, that was a trying to fix versus I was over it. So it was ego force trying to make up out of some feeling of loneliness or offness versus my soul is complete whether we're healed or not, right? I know that the second I'm all the way over that, which still is working itself out, I bet you anything, I'll forget about him completely and he'll call, right? So I think that the world is a great mirror of what's inside you. And so your triggers of something get represented in this mirror of the world outside. That person drives me nuts. Well, they'll keep doing it because you haven't healed this thing. But I do believe also all the things in our body that are fears and off are lies that have to be seen. And if they aren't seen, they end up manifesting as the actual thing you don't want to have happen. In other words, if you have an issue that if everyone could abandon me, whatever it is, if you don't heal that inside, where you get to a place where you're finally free and it's okay if everyone abandons me, I'm enough even if they do, then it alchemizes. You're not crazy and trying to keep everyone around. You become more attractive to hang out with, right? But if you don't heal that, this has to come out some way. So life makes it literally happen. That's why whatever you worry about, you create, because when it finally happens, you also let go of it. When you have your biggest fear happen, you let go of it because it happened. So now it leaves through your experience of the fear. Does that make sense? The fear actually has to happen one way or another. So you can either heal it by going inward and doing the conscious work, or everything you're worried about more and more will have to actually happen so you can let go of it. So I find more and more, and by the way, it speeds up depending on how conscious you are, right? So if you're unconscious to this stuff, it might not happen as quickly. But yeah, so there's some principles that I think I live.
That's some good principles.
Yeah.
Well, this has been a fantastic interview. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you, brother.
This was insightful. It was interesting. It was almost funny, but
yeah, I didn't kill.
No, it was wonderfully.
My goal wasn't comedy as much as the truth. But I haven't done that in years. But yeah,
you quit comedy? Like quit?
Completely quit.
Wow. His whole thing is really helping people now.
Wow, that's really okay. In that case, the last question. I was going to tie this up, but now I must know, what made you quit comedy?
A combination of things. One was that the thing about just feeling like there was a moment I was about to go tour. I was headlining a comedy club that week in I don't remember where, Nebraska or Dayton, Ohio or whatever. And I was going to go fly out, and I felt this moment where I felt in my body like, I got to go to the airport. And I felt that feeling. And I noticed it's not my calling anymore. It just took that. I believe very much that when you justify keeping something, you're now at a place where it's time to let go of it. In other words, you're justifying keeping something because your mind needs to make sense out of why you're ignoring your heart. So to give you an example, I have a 7-year-old daughter. You do too. I've never explained to anybody why I'm her dad. I've never been like, it's good that I'm her dad because, she gets we share medical health insurance, and that would not be nuts, right? Mm-hmm. But we all know what it's like to justify your job. I hate my job, but they're going to give me a promotion later. Or, yeah, that person was a jerk to me, but they took me out on a nice dinner. Like, this is you explaining why you're ignoring your heart. I felt my body literally say, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was when I had to enact the sentence, you can measure what you'll lose, you can't see what you'll gain. I felt if I stay in something I don't like, I will slowly lose my soul now because my soul is telling me, let go. Now the ego goes, I don't know what'll be on the other side though. I don't know what'll be. But what I've learned is it'll always be better because in saying goodbye to comedy, I let go of the me that has to keep doing it and is an image to other people of that type of fame and whatever. I want to know what I am. So when I let go of it, I started birthing all these revelations and connecting to source and speaking transformation. And then I started working with like Michael Beckwith and Eckhart Tolle and started speaking at events with Jim Carrey and Eckhart Tolle and all these things and working with my heroes in the self-help world. And I started realizing, what if I combine comedy and transformation? And then my ego said, well, the way you want to do it, no one's ever done that. And my soul was like, no one's ever done it. It's your own field. You can't fake your 20 years of stand-up comedy experience, and you can't fake the awareness you had. So you have your own lane. You have your own field. So I started going, so this was my idea. I let go of stand-up comedy as a comic. And then I had these, at the time, like 500 plus colleges that I had performed at as a comic. I started making videos for the colleges to ask them to speak as a lecturer. And I had all my friends bugging me, like going, why are you doing this? Like, you could be doing stand-up. You could be doing a club right now and making $5,000 for the week. And then like 100 of the colleges said yes to me doing the lecture circuit. And all of a sudden my rate at that time was like somewhere around 10,000. And all of a sudden way more money showed up for me to do this thing where I'm speaking from my heart and saying what's true to me. All of a sudden I'm going out doing one gig for 10 grand and flying home versus doing a week in a club for 5 and doing all the radio and all the crap out there. And all of a sudden, like, that was and then a week after that, Michael Beckwith at Agape announced, we're doing a talent show. And I'm like, I'll go do it. And there was like I did stand up and the whole audience was full of producers and they're offering me stuff. Then Jim Carrey's people call me and they go, we saw you doing transformational speaking and want you to come speak at our event. This is so funny because when I was a comic, I would go to auditions and be one of 100 people trying to get a part. When Jim Carrey's people called me, they had an event called GATE, stands for Global Alliance of Transformational Entertainers. I go do this event. The audience is 2,000 producers and directors. And Jim Carrey and Eckhart Tolle are in the fourth row. I go out on stage. I had nothing planned. I said, this is weird because I'm told a lot what would happen if Jim Carrey and Eckhart Tolle had a kid. And I said, I don't know if you guys are picturing that. Eckhart, that's a thought, so you don't even have those, so you're not picturing it. And I said, some of you guys might think that joke's offensive, but it's in the past, so Eckhart doesn't even know about it. And I killed, and I started realizing like, dude, transformational comedy is my thing. Like comedy that you can transform. And after that, I'm like backstage with Jim Carrey and Eckhart Tolle, and all these producers come running up and like, we'd like to put you in this thing, in this movie, this show, this whatever. And in the old days, I'm like cattle trying to get a part. And now they're coming to me. And I started just seeing that when I followed my heart, life became so much more effortless. And it just was like, yeah, you don't have to do this have to and consider and all the, get out of that world and go to the higher frequency. And after that, I started speaking at Agape and working with the other people and doing one-on-ones and then doing events. And it was so funny. As a comic, I had this big dream to do the Dolby Theater, and I couldn't reach it as a comic. And I was a very successful comic. But when I combined them, I suddenly was doing the Dolby Theater. I did a 3,400 sold out 2-day event where they do the Oscars. And that, by the way, that's an event called Love Rising that they can get for $20 and see that event too. And if they go to kylecease.com/love, they can see it. But as I move up in my soul, the career matches it. And this is why I don't work on my career, I work on me. And then the career changes, right? So it's literally for me all a work on me, and then the career changes. But what was on the other side of me letting go of something that I couldn't see was so much better. And the reason people are scared to let go of something is they don't get what's trying to come to them. If you look at it from God's perspective, like picture just a universe is like hovering over you, trying to give you the world or the right relationship, and you're just stuck in the wrong one and scared to let go of it. Or you're stuck in the wrong career and you're just scared to let go of it. And you're like, well, I got to do it for the money. And I'm like, do you know how much money you're losing? Because you're holding on to that for money, and you're losing your soul and money now. And so I wrote a book called The Illusion of Money, which is like, you're not going to believe how much more money you have when you let go of your attachment to money, right? And so that's what unfolded. When I let go of it, it was just a whole new world. And life is just about letting go and making space for the higher.
Well, it was quite a way to end with a good story. That's fantastic.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Definitely a great way to live life. Get a lot of optimism. I'm sure you gives you a lot of health and a lot of just personal fulfillment as well. So
yeah, life
amazing.
is good, man. Like
that is good. That's a rarity to hear nowadays. Most people will have something or other to complain about. Even those who didn't, almost die from a 10-day delusional dry fast driven by ivermectin. That's a first. I've heard a lot of things.
If you take ivermectin, make sure you ate.
Yeah, that's our
That's the lesson of this episode.
That's right.
That's the title. Make sure you ate.
That's right.
That won't do anything. Just so you know, if you as a joke put that on, no one will watch it. That's the audience is people who fasted for 10 days and took ivermectin on day 6. So I don't know how big that market is.
Well, amazing.
Yeah.
Well, Kyle, where can people find more of your work?
The biggest thing that I'm the most, one of the things that's spoken to me recently is to make products that some of them used to be thousands of dollars, make them 20.
Mm-hmm. $20. $20 Kyle.
It has been amazing because I feel like in this time,
that's like a comedy ticket, right? $20.
It is.
Yeah, okay.
And products that we have that used to be thousands are now 20. And I realized that in this time, and I was like, how would that work? But we sell one every few minutes. And I started getting so what we did was we put together, this is my favorite thing we have out right now. We put together a bundle of 5 guided meditations that we added the right frequency, hertz music and sound bowls and all this. And these are like 50 minutes to an hour long, basically 5 meditations. One's for loneliness, one's for health, one's for relationships, one's for just a general releasing of your past story, and one's for just a general meditation. We put them out maybe a month ago, and they can get it, I believe, at kylecease.com/meditations. This is how much I don't run any of it.
We'll
I
put
don't
a
even
link
know the
down
site.
into the descriptions.
Also, yeah, another one that has all of my stuff is kylecease.com/unlocked. But we found that people are going nuts about these meditations. And I'm more excited about people doing the work versus just hearing content. Like the guided meditation does have content, but they're going to have awakenings because they're actually doing it. And I think when we just listen to content, it's like watching people work out and trying to get fit. You're going to the gym and staring at everyone
and then you go home
on the podcast of the elliptical machine and the podcast of the bench press. And like, why aren't I changing? It's like, because you didn't do it. So the guided meditations are so awesome, and people are writing us, telling us crazy things that changed in their life. So that's one thing. We also have a membership site, the Absolutely Everything Pass. Then go to kylecease.com/everything and grab that too. And that's me doing live calls, a guided meditation every Sunday, a hot seat, calls on Wednesday nights, and about 1,000 hours of backlog content. It's awesome. So that's a great way for them to literally work with me. And it's crazy. It's doing really well.
Amazing.
So
we'll put all those
join us
links
at
below.
those.
So would love to, for everybody who's watching, definitely go check it out. There's a lot of amazing stuff on that, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And it's useful work. There's work that's actually going to make you happy. Now that's a rare offering.
Right? Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's, in a way, everyone's offering, but it's circumstantial. Like this car will make you happy, or this handbag will make you happy.
But this is actually the thing that's designed to make you happy. Not indirectly, but like actually
I'm
directly.
about cutting through the attachments and getting to the truth of what you are.
Fantastic.
So there's no fulfillment greater than that.
Fair. That's a great way. That's a great way to put it. Thank you, Kyle. Adam, where do we find you?
Right here on this podcast.
Yes.
And also on my website, adamlanesmith.com. I do have my courses. I have my coaching. Everything is available there. You're welcome to stop by. Where can we find you, Andre?
I'm at Andre Korokov on Instagram. And you guys, if you like this podcast, we'd like to see Kyle on perhaps again. We'd love to have a continuing conversation.
Yeah, for it.
Put your comments down below. Put your questions below. Please subscribe, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, everywhere you listen to podcasts. I Wish You Knew, at I Wish You Knew. Well, thank you very much, folks, for listening. And we'll see you next episode of I Wish You Knew.